Hello everyone, and welcome to a special edition of Cooking with Tare. I'm Tare, and the special edition has to do with COVID-19. And the COVID-19 I'm talking about today is not the disease itself, but it's the nearly 20 pounds that an awful lot of people are putting on that they're calling their COVID-19. I've gotten 2 inquiries now from actually adult grandchildren about a ketogenic diet. And so I thought I would walk you through the basics and point you at some resources. And I want to just say up front, I'm not a doctor and I don't play one on YouTube or on Facebook. I have studied this subject quite a lot. I'm interested in it, but I'm strictly an amateur. I'm not giving medical advice here. To the extent that you're going to use this diet for medical purposes, you really need to be in the care of a medical professional that understands how to apply a ketogenic diet to your particular needs. No 2 people react exactly the same to a ketogenic diet. My sous chef and I have both been on it, and we had very different reactions to it. I do very well on it. She does a little bit less well. I get great weight loss with it. She gets a little less, and that appears to be a difference between men and women generally. But let's talk about what this is. And in order to set the stage, I need to give you a couple of basics about nutrition. And the first is, let's talk about macronutrients. That's a big word that just refers to the major categories of nutrients that have calories. And there really are only 3, and we could come up with some subsets of those, but those are fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. Now, all 3 of those provide calories. Calorie is a unit of energy. And our entire body runs on the energy supplied by those 3 macronutrient categories. Now, I said we could actually break this down a little bit farther, and the reason why you might want to, if you go do a deep dive on this, is that carbohydrates have 2 subcategories, fructose and alcohol, and fructose and alcohol metabolize very differently from all of the rest of the carbohydrates. So if you do a deep dive, you'll see that that's the case. But for our purposes here today, let's just take a look at those 3 categories. All right, so let's talk about what ketosis is. Ketosis is a state that your body goes into when you restrict carbohydrates. There's a very limited amount of carbohydrate in your body. Your body, all told, and this is in the form of glucose in your blood, in the form of glycogen in your liver and your muscles, and the form of adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, in the muscle tissue itself. Your total stored calories of energy from carbohydrate is around 2,000 calories. And again, that would vary significantly if you're much larger or much smaller, but let's think in general terms that we're looking at 2,000 calories. Now, I burn more than 2,000 calories in a day. So if I stop eating, which I do periodically, I actually do like to fast. If I stop eating, at the end of the first day, I've burned through most or all of the available stored carbohydrate energy in my body. If I didn't have another source of energy, I would die. And so that's true of all of us, right? And so what are the odds that throughout human history, any human being would not have a day in their life that they simply couldn't have access to food? I mean, it's a very high probability that that's true for every human being. So the only reason we've survived this long is that we have an alternative fuel system that we can use, and that's fat. And fat is something that we store up, and we can have lots and lots of energy stored in the form of fat. Some of us have enough to walk from here to California with no problem. So as soon as we start to deplete the glucose in our body, we start to metabolize the fat in our body. And what that does is it produces these ketone bodies, things like beta-hydroxybutyrate. And the cool thing about these substances is that our body is perfectly happy burning this stuff. Our brain is even happier burning this stuff. So really there's a sort of mental clarity that you enjoy when you're burning mostly ketones. And there's and by the way, your brain has no stored carbohydrate, and it cannot use protein as fuel other than if your body processes the protein back through your liver through a process called gluconeogenesis, it makes glucose out of protein. But in the brain itself, the brain either has to have glucose or it has to have ketones. Turns out it handles ketones beautifully. And going into a state of ketosis does allow the brain to sort of rest metabolically. And even if other energy sources, energy pathways are impaired in the brain, going into ketosis can help that. So we're actually looking at, not me personally, but science is looking at the use of a ketogenic diet or use of ketosis as a way of managing neurodegenerative disorders of aging, for example. Okay, so now that you know what it is, why would you ever consider going into ketosis? And I would say the primary reason is that once you're in ketosis, you just really don't have much of an appetite. And because you don't have much of an appetite, it is easy to restrict the calories that you're consuming. And if you restrict the calories you're consuming, the alternative fuel that your body is burning is your own body fat. So if you want to get lean, it is ketosis might be the easiest way for you to do that. The other thing that going into ketosis does is it lowers blood sugar and therefore lowers blood insulin levels. That being the case, your total circulating insulin goes down, and insulin is the hormone that tells your body to store fat. So with low insulin levels, your body is much more likely to mobilize the fat that is in storage and put it to use as fuel. Okay, so if that's the reason you want to do this, first of all, if you have any medical conditions, I do strongly suggest that you get in touch with a medical professional familiar with the use of a ketogenic diet in connection with any other medical issue that you might have. To design a diet for yourself, and everyone really is going to need an individual diet. You're going to have to craft this thing for yourself. So the principles are the same, but the quantities you would consume and the ratios might be different. So the first place to go is to a website called Blood Sugar 101. This was put up by a lady by the name of Jenny Rule. Terrific, terrific lady. She's not a medical professional, but she's a very, very bright woman who has done a lot of research and written some great stuff for diabetics. One of the things that she has, if you go to Blood Sugar 101, is there is a calculator section. And if you go to the nutritional calculator, one of the things that you can do is enter all of your particular information, gender, height, weight, etc., and how much you want to lose a week. And in the field where she asks you how much carbohydrate you're currently eating, enter 50 grams. And the reason for that is almost everybody will go into ketosis if you're eating 50 grams or fewer of carbohydrates in a day. So if you enter 50 grams, and then also in there enter that you've been restricting carbohydrates for more than 3 weeks. And what will happen is she will kick out a report that will tell you exactly what your budget is for, we're going to use 50 grams for carbohydrate. She'll tell you how many grams of protein you need to eat in a day, how many grams of fat you need to eat in a day in order to achieve whatever your weight loss goal is. Okay, so that gives you a starting point. It tells you, tailored to you, your age, your gender, your activity level, your current weight, etc. It tells you, gives you a budget to work with for carbs, proteins, and fats. The second thing to do is to get the program Lose It. Lose It on your phone, put it on, or use it on your computer, however you are able to most easily work with it. And by the way, you can put it on multiple devices. And just to be clear, I'm not being compensated by Lose It. I'm not being compensated by Jenny Rule or anything else. These are just resources that I have found that I use that work for me, and I'm just sharing them with you. Okay, so if you go to Lose It, what you're going to be able to do is to create a menu. And I strongly recommend that if you're going to try to stay on a diet, that you really need to plan out everything you're going to eat for a week, buy the groceries necessary to prepare all of those things, get other stuff out of sight and out of mind, because it's the only way you're going to maintain the discipline. And one of the problems with a ketogenic diet is that it is difficult to get into ketosis, but it is very easy to get out of ketosis. The worst 2 days on a ketogenic diet are the first two. Once you're over the hump, once your body has made the transition to relying primarily on ketones for its energy source, it just is perfectly happy burning your body fat, and it will supply your brain with all the energy it needs. The hunger cravings go away. The crashing blood glucose is not an issue because you're not using glucose as a fuel primarily. And so your whole body and your whole brain gets happy after about 2 days on this diet. The first 2 days are rough, but if you bounce in and out of the diet, you're effectively putting yourself in those 2 days over and over and over again. So it is critical that you get organized and go into this and stay in it, and certainly tough out the early couple of days. And very quickly, you're going to find that A, the food is very tasty because it's high in fat, and fat is very flavorful. B, you're completely satisfied on a relatively low-calorie diet. And C, you're effectively losing body fat and preserving muscle, by the way. So there's enough protein in your protein budget that you're not wasting away muscles even as you're losing fat. Okay, so how do you create your meal plan? The way we do it is we start with the protein that we want to eat. So we'll make a list of, okay, on Monday we want to have chicken, on Tuesday we want to have fish, on Wednesday we want to have beef, and so on. And we'll make that list up, and that starts the menu planning process. Then we say, okay, what would we like to eat with that chicken, beef, or fish? And what we're looking at are non-starchy vegetables. You'll have a very difficult time staying within your carb budget if you're eating starchy vegetables. So we're talking about green leafy vegetables or other vegetables that are low in carbohydrate. And again, Lose It will tell you that. You can enter a portion into Lose It, and it will give you the number of grams of carbohydrate in that portion. And so you can know immediately whether that substance is going to be appropriate for your diet or not. So please use Lose It, build your menu around a protein, stick with non-starchy vegetables, frozen or fresh. And I know in our grocery store, it's often difficult to get the kind of fresh vegetables that I want. But frozen is perfectly okay. As a matter of fact, frozen is picked at the peak, and then it kind of goes into suspended animation, the vegetable does, when it's frozen. And you might actually be getting more nutrients and higher quality produce by eating the frozen than you would the fresh. I do love fresh. So build your menu, start with a protein, add a non-starchy vegetable, and then think about the method of preparation you want to use and which fat you're going to use. Okay, you do not want to be using fats that produce a lot of inflammation. Inflammation is the enemy of weight loss. So you want anti-inflammatory fats. So this would be good extra virgin olive oil. It would be things like coconut oil. The beauty of coconut oil is it contains a lot of medium chain triglycerides. These are substances that immediately boost your ketotic state. And so that's great. Avocado oil works, but please, no safflower oil, sunflower oil, no corn oil, certainly no soybean oil. So you don't want the seed oils. You really want these other oils that are healthful. And if you're eating good food and you're using healthful oils, this is going to promote good health in every regard. Okay, there's a couple of things that you should expect if you're going to get involved with all of this. The first is the upfront burden of planning and organizing and shopping and learning to cook in slightly different ways, using slightly different ingredients. That's the worst part of the whole thing. But that passes, you're going to be over that for the most part at the end of the first week. The second hardest thing is getting through those first couple of days. And you really just have to suck it up and say, you know what, I'm going to get through this. Now, I have to mention that, included in your carb budget is alcohol. So alcohol doesn't fit in this diet. Grains do not fit very well in this diet. So you're not going to be eating bread. There is a way to make keto bread. I think it's better to just learn to live without it because you spend your life trying to make something that is an inferior substitute for what it is that you're craving. You need to be able to monitor your own blood ketone levels. And to do that, you need a finger stick blood ketone monitor. Now, you can Google this and look on Amazon. There's all sorts of ones out there. The one that we've used is, see if I can find it. Yeah, Precision Extra is the one that we have used. And so this is just like taking a blood glucose level. There's a little lancet that you stick your finger, you get a drop of blood, it goes on a test strip, the test strip goes into the meter, and the meter gives you a readout. And what you're shooting for is to get to somewhere between 1.5 and 3.0 millimolar per liter. That tells you you're in a nice deep ketotic state and that you are in the condition that maximizes fat loss, body fat loss. Couple of things in addition to keep in mind. You need to drink a lot of water. You are going to be excreting an awful lot of stuff as a result of burning your own body fat. And you need to be able to flush your body out. So drink plenty of water. It's also true that, in my experience, that you need electrolyte replacement. For whatever reason, in the process of getting rid of everything else, we get rid of sodium and potassium and magnesium. And so I mix up an electrolyte drink that tastes like a margarita, sort of. So I take light salt. This is Morton's light salt that has both potassium and sodium in it. Put a small amount in a large container of water. I squeeze a couple of limes into that. And so it's salty water with limes in it. I add a little bit of stevia to sweeten it up a little bit. And that's my electrolyte replacement drink. It has no artificial coloring. You might say the stevia is an artificial sweetener, but compared to off-the-shelf replacement drinks, this one has a lot less in it that you don't want, and has everything in it that you do want. The rapid weight loss that you will experience in the first few days, don't get too excited about that. That rapid loss is water weight loss. So you're going to flatten out quite a lot. And if you were able to get a pound, pound and a half, 2 pounds a week on a ketogenic diet, you're doing very well. And really, you have to think about this long term. You got to think about this as a lifestyle until you get down to your ideal body fat level, in which case you might want to go cyclic with keto. You might not want to stay on it strictly, or you may find that when you come off of it, you start to put the weight on rapidly and that your body just needs to be in a ketogenic state for the rest of your life. A couple of things to keep in mind also are that when you're producing ketones, you will also be getting rid of those on your breath, in your sweat, and the smell of ketones might be a little bit strange to you. One of the ketones that you'll exhale is acetone. This is the same stuff that's in nail polish remover. So it's a funny smell, and you might be wondering what the heck is going on. That's what's going on. You're burning ketones. It's an indication that you're getting rid of your body fat. Another consideration is that body fat is a place where a lot of us store an awful lot of toxic material. So in the course of acquiring the body fat, one of the things that might have happened is things like heavy metals and other toxic substances might have been stored along with the fat. A lot of people say rapid fat loss might produce an unacceptably high burden of toxins into your system by virtue of the fact that you're eating nasty fat, the fat on your body. So giving yourself the opportunity to lose the body fat more gradually is actually a really good idea. And if your diet is good, and if your supplement regimen is good, you'll be able to detox the small amount of stuff that you're injecting into your body by consuming your own body fat. All right, so this is just a real quickie overview. It's a basic game plan for getting into a ketotic lifestyle. I'll give you a couple of resources. These are the researchers that I've read that I think very highly of. This is Volek and Phinney. That's V-O-L-E-K and P-H-I-N-N-E-Y. This is the real deal. This is the in-depth medical approach. These are real researchers who have done lots of really good, deep look at this. Another one is Dominic D'Agostino. Dominic has been working under contract with the Navy SEALs. The Navy SEALs use a rebreather instead of a tank on their back. And one of the problems with the rebreather is that they can end up with a neurological problem while on the rebreather that can be prevented by being in ketosis. And so he has worked with the Navy SEALs on both studying the result of ketosis on the use of the rebreather, but also looking at exogenous ketones. This would be substances that you would swallow, like beta-hydroxybutyrate, that would get your blood level up of ketones very quickly so that they don't necessarily have to be on a ketogenic diet all the time, so that they're ready to be using a rebreather at the moment's notice. There are lots of podcasts out there that cover this topic. And again, we're talking about people who do this all day, every day. And if you really want the in-depth knowledge, they're the ones you ought to be going to, not me. But let me point you at a couple of them. There's a podcast called Living La Vida Low Carb. And my sous chef and I were interviewed on episode 641 on that show. There's another one called Two Keto Dudes. I've listened to a bunch of theirs. They're funny. They provide recipes. And by the way, most of these people will have a website with a lot of recipes, and they'll have a lot of ideas on this low carb or ketogenic way of living. And so it's really good to go to the source and be listening to someone who does this all day, every day, as opposed to me, who's a dilettante skimming the surface here. So I hope I've given you a little insight into, what a ketogenic diet is, how you might choose to do it if you think that this is a good idea. And again, with the caution that if you're doing this to address a medical condition, you probably want to be in the hands of a knowledgeable practitioner who has worked with both your condition and a ketogenic diet in the past. I like medical practices that have nutritionists and dietitians working with physicians and physicians' assistants and nurse practitioners as a team, so that you might be able to pull from any one of those people depending upon what your particular need is. The other thing that I would suggest is there's the new Atkins diet is a diet book. It updated Dr. Atkins' original work, and it really is a good resource for people who want to remain in ketosis. So if you have any questions or if you have any comments, please put them below. I'm always interested in whatever it is that you want me to address next, and that's why I did this special show. I hope you're able to lose your COVID-19 or however many pounds you've put on while in captivity, and I hope you stay safe and get out and get some exercise and some sunshine as soon as you can. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.